Well, good morning and welcome. So great to see all of you here on this Zoom this morning. I'm Griffin O'Shaughnessy, the founder and CEO of Canopy Advisory Group. Canopy is an on-demand talent firm. We are here to foster growth and tackle organizational challenges through our network of top-tier professionals. Part of our vision at Canopy includes connecting our broader community, all of you, with incredible experts like Rob Carpenter, our guest this morning. I was just kind of chatting with Rob before we started the Zoom this morning about how long we've known each other. And our friendship goes back more than 10 years when he started his first business, Appet Ventures, which many of you may be familiar with, a software development company that he launched back in 2011. We then worked together again at his next venture, which was an AI startup called Valiant. Valiant created an AI facial recognition interface that Rob sold to national fast food chains. And we were lucky enough that Rob leveraged fractional talent from Canopy at both Appet and Valiant while he was there. And now, after selling Valiant, we're thrilled that Rob is offering his AI expertise to Canopy clients on a project basis. I have pulled Rob in to help me with our first foray into AI as a company at Canopy, which I'm thrilled about and has been a really fun process. So, Rob will touch on that. I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. But we would love for this to be an interactive session. So, please feel free to ask questions live. Serena and I will also be monitoring the chat. So, if you're more comfortable throwing a question in the chat, feel free to do that as well. And we'll make sure that Rob sees in response to that question. So, with that, Rob, I will let you take it away. We're so honored to have you here this morning. And thank you for sharing your expertise with our broader Canopy community.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for that warm introduction. I really appreciate it. I know several of you that are on here, and for those that I don't, my style is very friendly and conversational. And so I just want to echo what Griffin said. If you have questions as I'm talking through things, please feel free to interrupt me, post it in chat. Happy to chat through that in real time. I know with so much disruption going on and a lot of questions around this technology, people have things that they want to work through. So I'm going to do my best to keep the content on the front side to about 30 minutes, and then we'll have 30 minutes on the back side to answer your questions, and then I'll be available after that if you need me. So as a real quick background, I received my MBA from CU Denver in Enterprise Technology Management, and I started my conversational AI company in 2016. So I've got around a decade of experience in artificial intelligence, which is not that common, especially as the current era of AI is probably only about 24 months old. And what I want to talk with all of you about today is the rise of AI agents. And from my perspective, this is going to be kind of the third great shift in the capabilities of the internet. I view sort of the first phase of the internet was really information that's displayed that we could read. So think about a lot of like newspapers, for example, were some of the first adopters of the internet. You could go and you could consume information, and that was basically it. The second great wave was then the rise of truly interactive software applications. So think about your ability to get a home loan or apply for a credit card, check your banking details, book a vacation. The internet enabled us to actually do things. The third wave that AI agents are going to give rise to is now software doing things autonomously like a human on our behalf. Some small and large corporations are stepping slowly into this space, testing a few things out, and other major corporations are going all in with plans to roll out thousands, if not tens of thousands of agents to be able to actually start doing things on behalf of the company, a role that had long been served by employees. And I think this is going to create a lot of disruption, but also a lot of opportunity, which makes this, I think, a very topical conversation both for individuals that are trying to view their own career as well as organizations and where they take their businesses to return the most shareholder value, provide the most opportunities to their employees, and I think most importantly, stay competitive against the other companies that are adopting this type of technology. I want to start with calling out how confusing this time is. There's a lot of different narratives that are being thrown around right now. One of the big ones is the AI bubble. And is this going to pop and go the way of the dot-com era? Or you see CEOs who, granted, have a vested interest in this continuing, warning about a lot of jobs being eliminated over the coming years and decade. And then you have the MIT study saying 95% of AI initiatives don't deliver any ROI. These are very polarizing and competing narratives about what AI is and where it's going to go. And I think in a lot of these types of situations, the truth ultimately lies somewhere in the middle for these types of opportunities. So the promise is enormous, but so are the risks, which makes this a very exciting and I think scary time, again, both for individuals in their own career and corporations writ large in terms of how they're going to go and approach this market and this new technology as it's coming out. I'm sure as many of you are very familiar with right now is how do I tell the hype from reality, what's actually going on versus these kind of big headlines that are being thrown around. You'll hear some people trying out AI, maybe not quite sure what they're doing with it. Some are getting major results and some are not. In my opinion, value is going to come from very intentional use of how you build these AI agents, how you deploy them, and I think most importantly, how you think about them, which is ultimately going to determine how you judge their success. And I'm going to share some guidelines later in this presentation of how I would recommend you think about this process. And then lastly, I just want to make a note, as I've talked to some companies over the last few months, I'll hear things like, well, we tried this 5 or 6 years ago and it just didn't really deliver results. I would encourage you to wipe away literally anything you know about AI prior to 12 to 18 months ago. That is how recent and I would argue important what we are going through right now. So anything that you did prior to mid or early 2024 is really fairly irrelevant to the current technology that we're going to be talking about today. The other thing that I want to share is sort of a forward projection of where are things going to go over the next 18 months. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, as you think about your individual career or the direction of your company, is that AI today is the worst it's ever going to be. This is the bottom of the capability of AI, and it is only going up from here. One of those major drivers are data centers. The data centers are obviously the things that house all of the NVIDIA chips, which is the thing driving, I feel like, our economy at this point. But we can use forward projection of data center development as a bit of a litmus test of where we think AI agents are going to go. In my personal opinion, although we've made a lot of small modular changes to how we look at AI, the basic architecture of current large language models go back to Jeffrey Hinton's research in the 1980s. The reason we're seeing such dramatically different outputs with AI today is almost entirely driven by the massive increase of computational scale that we are affording to AI. Therefore, as the data centers and the underlying technology for computations grows, the AI is growing as well. And we've really seen that over these 18 months that as this technology has gotten smarter, it's been driven in no small part by just vast increases in the underlying computational capabilities. And if you agree with me in that underlying assumption, then the computational capabilities coming to market over the next 18 months are about 10 times greater than what we have today, which again goes back to what we have today is the worst it will be. I don't necessarily think there will be a one-to-one correlation that a 10x increase in computation increases in AI that is 10 times smarter than what we have today. But I do think that we will be looking at a factor increase in intelligence over the next 18 months. And I think that's why it makes this time very important because this technology is going to start scaling fairly rapidly. And if you wait too long to dip a toe in the water to understand what these agents can do for you personally or for your business, you run the risk that some of your bigger competitors who have already deployed this technology and they're refining it and are quicker to change are going to get outsized gains relative to your position in the market over these next 18 months. I also want to make a quick note that with the massive infrastructure build out for AI, and I think this is where some of the concerns around the bubble are coming from, is that although these AI companies are already generating tens of billions of dollars in profit, that doesn't necessarily match to the trillions of dollars, I mean, literally trillions of dollars in infrastructure build out that they're working to deploy over the next couple of years. I would reframe this as you think about that as the development of the railroad. That yes, there were benefits of building a railroad from Boston to New York in the 1800s, but massive infrastructure development was required to connect the East Coast and the West Coast via railroad. And you had to get that connection done before you saw that value driver. And so, yes, there's a lag right now between profitability and build out, but that's required to get to the intelligence that these companies and I think have a realistic chance of achieving over the next 18 months to 3 years. And because these major corporations are deploying AI at scale, it's something that we all need to be aware of. I'm sure some of you have seen this graphic that has been deployed, and there's some competing information about it. But Facebook, which is one of, let's say, 5 to 7 companies that are deploying these data centers in the tens of billions to hundreds of billions range, has just one project that is expected to be in size of Manhattan Island. So you're talking one project of one company relative to the 10 to 15 of these types of centers that are going to be coming online over the next 18 months to 3 years. And so when we start to look at technology build out at this scale, and if we agree that the underlying architecture is still relatively similar to what Geoffrey Hinton created in the 80s, then you could see how this much computational capability coming to market will drive the intelligence of these AI systems over the next 18 months to 3 years. And so agents today are ready to be deployed. And what a lot of us are hearing in the market right now is kind of fear around people that are new to the workforce that are having a hard time breaking in. And in fact, unemployment rate for new grads and entry level positions are at an all-time low. Some of that is driven by macroeconomic factors, but at least some of that is driven by the rise of these AI systems, which means companies are deploying AI agents and AI systems at scale, which is reducing their need for entry level employees. So, areas where we're seeing this technology be deployed efficiently and effectively is a space I know a lot about from running Valiant, which is conversational AI. Gone are the days of super rough IVR systems where you ask a question, wait for an answer. We're now entering an era where the AI sounds completely human, conversational, it stays on topic, it knows what needs to be handled in that conversation, and can carry on sales and close customers in real time. These are systems that work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't call out sick, they don't show up late. You can basically clone your best, let's say entry level at this point sales employee, and then scale that across your entire organization. For those of you that have presentation adjacent to jobs where you need to do presentations to people, we'll talk about this in a bit, but there's a fantastic tool called Manus that will build beautiful presentations for you in real time. The way that I use the technology is I'll go into GPT-5, which is my preferred LLM. Some people like Gemini or Llama, and I'll go back and forth with the AI and I'll draft an outline for my presentation. I then copy it over into Manus. And Griffin got to experience it literally with this presentation, where as we were talking about this presentation, the Manus AI was building this presentation in real time. And so you could see it creating all the graphics, the images, the layout, the text, the whole nine yards based on the outline that I had uploaded to it. So if you do any presentations, check out Manus. It will save you hours, if not tens of hours, developing these types of presentations.
Rob, I'm just going to
Other,
interject really
yeah, yeah,
quick.
go
I
ahead.
thought what's fascinating about that too is Serena and I were like, wait, tell us specifically, how did you do that? And so he showed us the language he used in chat to sort of refine his message for this presentation. It started out broad and he filtered it and filtered it to get the feel of the information he wanted to share. And then he literally asked ChatGPT, now create instructions to build a presentation that I can copy and paste into Manus. So you used chat to actually tell you how to talk to Manus. And that was the piece I think that I didn't know to make that connection because I would think, well, Manus, I don't even really know. What should I tell Manus to do? And you can use Chat GPT to tell Manus what to do, and then they can speak sort of that language together. So I thought that was really fascinating. And a presentation that would have normally taken you maybe 4 or 5 hours took about 20 minutes to a half an hour, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first draft was done in about 5 minutes, and then I
Yeah.
probably put another 45 minutes of refinements into it. And historically, that could have easily taken 5 to 10 hours to put that type of a presentation together.
Right.
Additionally, if you have a preferred site for creating imagery, like obviously this is an AI image here on this slide, you can copy all of those into Manus, and then it'll automatically integrate it in the right spots in the presentation flow that it creates for you. Moving on, another area where we're seeing people using AI agents right now is where they have disparate systems that don't talk to each other or don't play nice. You can use integration engines like Zapier or N8N, and an AI agent of your preferred choice running in the background to then pull in all of that data, clean it up, sync it correctly, and then push it to the appropriate sources for that technology. And then another use case is we're talking to an oil and gas company where they'll go and they'll buy plots of land, and those plots of lands can have owners stretching back over 100 years. And there's PDF documents that might be two, three, 400 pages in length, feed it into the AI system, and then it can automatically generate a list, in some cases of 100 to 150 different owners over that time period, and provide proof of ownership of who you are actually buying that land and that technology from. So, just a couple examples there. Um, a very, very important thing I kind of want to outline for everybody here is that I am 100% not advocating that you find a system that could be automated and you just sort of give it to AI and you walk away. AI is not there today. But I do think if appropriately scoped and appropriately implemented, especially as you're talking about jobs that you might give to somebody that has been in your company for 1 to 3 years, the AI system can probably handle about 70 to 80% of that workload. And then humans are extremely important for vetting that last 20% and verifying citations, calculations, processes to ensure that the end result is valuable. And we use the simple example of a presentation. But if you're cutting the time down for a presentation, let's say from 4 hours to 40 minutes, theoretically, if you had to pump out a bunch of presentations, you now can produce at 3 to 5 times the output you could previously. And I think this is a very, very important takeaway because as you consider your own career or you consider your company, if you can increase the output of your employees without drastically stressing them out by making them work nights and weekends, and you can even get a 50% increase in their output. That's extremely valuable to you and to them. I'm at the point now where companies that I own or companies that I work with, it's an absolute requirement for everybody to be using AI technology because I know it drastically cuts down on how long it takes to complete a task, and they can therefore take on more work in that time. So there's probably also for some people a mind shift there that needs to happen where there shouldn't be embarrassment around using AI or GPT or any of the other products that we'll talk about. You should make that a requirement. People should be integrating those into their work output, and you should be seeing either from yourself or for others in the same amount of time that they can produce, 50% to 400% more work by effectively employing these AI agent systems. And I think this is an important way where we can find a happy middle ground where, we're not necessarily, laying people off or not hiring people, but we are still, as a company or an organization, increasing our profitability and increasing our output, which will be essential to compete with the other players in the market. Because even if you're not sure about how you deploy this, your competitors will be or new entrants will be, and you need to make sure that you're staying competitive relative to these other companies. Um, Griffin, I know we have a few questions I saw come through. Should we take a few of those, or should we keep rolling? I can get through the rest of this here in about eight or 10 minutes.
Keep going. I think we've just got some comments. People are loving it.
Okay.
No questions,
Hopefully they're not like, this guy's full of it. He doesn't even know what he's talking about.
not at all. Keep rolling.
All right. So let's talk actual applications. And I think this is going to be one of the more valuable slides in this presentation for everybody is where could you actually use AI agents at today? Operations, 100%, this is the number one place that you need to be looking at. There are so many companies, especially legacy companies, that are still doing things with analog, manual, human heavy processes that could be drastically sped up. Now, we've already talked about Manus and N8N, which, as a reminder, is a system that can connect disparate systems. It's also a way where anybody who has the time and the inclination can learn to build AI agents. Maybe your company doesn't want to take this on, but you want to be more efficient in your role, either to cement your place in the company or get in a few golf games during the course of the day and nobody's the wiser because you're still outputting at the same level. I encourage you to get in and start playing with these tools. They're very user friendly. I am not an engineer by trade. And between YouTube and the website, I'm building AI agents that can automate tasks for me that normally would have been a manual process. Um, Sales and marketing is probably one of the other major areas that we're seeing people adopt AI agents. I'm really not picking favorites here. I'm just giving you examples, but Replicant is a company where I've seen really positive things out of them for automating frontline sales work, where it sounds human and it carries on a human level conversation with customers. This can be new inbound customers. This could be customers that you lost 5 years ago. Get a list of all the customers you lost, build a sales system, right? And have a agent like Replicant. There's multiple others. Go back and call prior lost customers and see if you can drum up new business from people who might be interested in coming back to you. Um, if you're doing any sort of social media campaigns, pay-per-click campaigns, Pomeli is a product that Google just rolled out literally a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And you give it your website and it will generate social media, internet-ready creatives, banner ads, and things like that, that you can immediately pump into your system and roll out. It gives you more ideas, greater diversity of content. And again, it speeds up that process and that workload on your shoulders to be able to handle some of these different types of campaigns. Um, Finance, while maybe not quite as much of a home run as the first two, is another area that can be very valuable, can speed up workflows, can automate processes. And this is an area where over the next 12 months in particular, I would expect to see 2 to 3x improvements in how systems like GPT or Gemini perform in terms of their outputs with being able to review your finances, provide you feedback. I've got some other things in here like matching invoices to costs, combing through, looking for irregular transactions, things like that. 12 to 18 months, these things will probably be able to, at a 90 to 95% accuracy, start drafting profit and loss, cash flow statements, balance sheets, things like that. OpenAI, I know in particular, has hired hundreds of accounting professionals to train and refine their product. And so that's one of those sort of leading indicators that tells me that greater financial capabilities are coming down the line. Back
Real
end data
quick.
operations. If you have, massive databases, things aren't talking to each other, you're not sure on the quality of it. There's half a dozen good companies. I grabbed Accio as an example that will go in and clean up that data for you to ensure that the underlying data underpinning your business is of the highest quality possible. And then a company that I personally think is pretty exciting is a company called Blitzy. They do the, 80% AI, 20% human. They can look at any legacy code base and convert it to modern technology. There are a lot of companies that have, absolutely critical software systems that were developed 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, that maybe only one or two people even know how to maintain, and they're really stuck with their current technology stack. Blitzy is an AI system that will go and it can review literally tens of millions of lines of code and convert to an old, again, 20, 30, 40-year-old code base into a modern code base that makes your backend infrastructure scalable again. And then there's a lot of tools coming online that allows anybody, literally anyone on this call, to build custom software. Base 44 is a favorite of mine. Lovable is another hyperscaler company, but you interact with it just like you do with ChatGPT. Go to their website, there's a prompt window. You tell it what type of software you want. It will logically expand upon what you inputted to build out an entire requirements document. And then line by line, it will write all of that code for that software application. And what I think is really exciting about this type of technology is it's going to democratize our access to software. And again, I'm coming from custom software. I'm coming from somebody that spent tens of millions building AI systems. But now individuals can build software applications that maybe just make their job easier or make their department more efficient, or best case scenario, it's software that makes the entire company efficient. A lot of times we get locked into either legacy software or others because we need something to do a critical job for us, but in and of itself isn't that critical. As an example, for Base 44, I was able to build out clock in, clock out software for a customer where you go in, you tell it what you want, you can add people, it tracks everything, it can sync with back-end payroll software, and it allows people to clock in and clock out. It's not a complex software application. It took me about 30 minutes to build it, and it saves thousands of dollars per year. It's not mind blowing, but it is an example of what's possible with this type of technology. And honestly, the best way to understand this is to just get in and play with it. They're very, very user friendly. And so if there's anything you do in your job or at your company that is somewhat repetitive or that you could train an entry level employee to do, go check out those technologies. I think you'll find the process kind of fun and interesting about how you can build custom software for yourself.
Rob,
Um,
hold
yeah,
on one second. Will you go back to the last slide? I think you've got people's minds turning with suggestions of these actual products. And one question that's popping up a lot in the chat is where can we all go to stay on top of the latest and greatest releases like this? Like you're telling us this right now, but we know it's going to change in 2 months and 6 months and 10 months plus. Rundown has been recommended. Are there other, newsletters you receive? What
Hmm.
are you getting sort of the high level recommendations to check out all these different platforms? How can we stay on top of it also?
Yeah, that is an awesome question because there is quite literally a new, in my opinion, meaningful product release almost every single week, but at minimum every other week. And that's punctuated by major foundational improvements in these underlying large language models, probably every 60 to 90 days. I really like the TLDR newsletter. It shows up in my inbox every single morning, and it'll have 10 to 15 pretty interesting stories of things that are going on in the marketplace and new technologies that are coming online. It's a little bit more forward looking, but the Moonshots podcast is spectacular. It comes out once or twice a week. It's people on the podcast that I not only highly respect in the technology space, but they're extremely well connected. So they'll have Sam Altman, they'll have Eric Schmidt, they'll have Satya Nadella. Like the people that are moving these markets will come
Mhm.
on and spend a half hour to an hour with them talking about here's where things are and here's where things are going. I
Okay.
think for every one of us as humans, this next phase of our economy is probably going to be disruptive. And I think the most important thing is to be nimble and to always be learning. And that's what makes these sources really good. I have one more podcast that I just want to mention real quick. Let me see where it's at. The AI Daily Brief is another really good one. Podcast episodes are only about 20, 25 minutes long. I like to listen to it because I'm a nerd on the way into work.
Yeah.
Um, but the first half of the episode, they'll run through 5 to 10 headlines. And then the second half of the episode, they'll go in deep on one of the new releases that has come out and why it's valuable or why maybe it's overhyped and kind of sucks. But I would say maybe the AI Daily Brief out of everything will help you stay the most on top of the new things that are coming out. And then if you find something that you like, YouTube, go to YouTube. Somebody has already put together like an hour-long show, and you can go deep on any one of these things that comes out that you find interesting.
That's super helpful. And we will go ahead and throw that in the follow-up to
Yes.
the podcast or to this webinar. We'll list the podcast that Rob's recommending. We'll include maybe Rob, you can send us a link to the TLDR homepage to make sure we've got the right source for that and rundown as well. And then we have another question around sales agents' effectiveness. Is it more effective in certain sectors versus others? Whereas, some are more service driven, human centered, and require, more human touch, and other sectors, are more quickly being automated in the sales category. How would you break up sort
I
of?
would unfortunately quantify it around experience. And I do truly feel bad for people that are trying to enter this market right now. But that is where I would go to. If I could train somebody in about a week or two as an entry level employee to handle these sales calls, whatever types they are, then I think that is low hanging fruit for automation. When I was running Valiant, I closed a deal with Burger King. That took 2 years. AI is not at that point yet. It's not going to do a 2 year sales cycle to close a, whatever, Fortune 500 customer. Um, but if it's sort of basic, repetitive type of calls, like maybe you get a couple hundred a month of customers needing something, that's where I think you start to see these AI agents doing really well. Again, it's not all or nothing. Think about it in terms of that 70 to 80% ratio. Have really good triggers in place for it to hand off to a human if it starts to get stuck. In Valiant, with our conversational AI system, what we found across tens of thousands of conversations is that the first mistake the AI makes, the customer's annoyed. And by the second mistake, they're pissed. And so I think you can kind of set your own threshold. If you've made a second mistake, you definitely want to transfer to a human. If you've made one mistake, you may want to transfer at that point as well. And And then you collect data and you just keep refining, keep refining, keep refining. And then every 60 to 90 days, as a new foundational LLM hits the market, you then upgrade your back end infrastructure. And now your sales system is automatically that much more leveled up.
Makes sense. Perfect. All right, keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm now running over my time, so I apologize. So, where to start? Brainstorm repetitive, constrained tasks. Ask yourself, could an entry-level employee do this? This is important, I think, because there are still costs associated with building AI agents. If we automated it, how much would it save us? And then write a 1 to 3 page standard operating procedure. And if you can clearly outline step by step exactly how this should happen and how this should work, AI agents can take on that type of work. If you have to have a 50-page standard operating agreement, probably not good for today's AI agents. Could be in 18 months, but if you're in the 1 to 5 page range, 1 to 10 page range, I think AI agents are really good in that space right now. And then isolate the team that's going to do this. Try not to have them getting distracted by other things. Build the system, and then you really want to run it in parallel to your current operations so you can compare for fidelity. And then you just want a solid feedback loop. Don't expect it to be perfect out of the gate. Nothing is, technology is not. And I think in general, we really need a mind shift around AI. Traditionally, we're all used to software where you click a button and it does a thing. And the reason for that is the underlying language is Boolean. It's one or zero, it's on or off, black or white. Software historically is pretty, one dimensional, it's one or the other. AI is not that. AI is probabilistic. Based on all my training material and based on what I'm seeing, I think X. And so that probabilistic nature makes it, by its very definition, a little more complicated. And I think people are getting more familiar with that, especially with the proliferation of ChatGPT and Gemini. But that was one of the challenging barriers for me at Valiant was when we were bringing AI to market a decade ago, people were having a hard time training their mind to not think of software as ones and zeros where you push a button and it does a thing, and that it's probabilistic, and by probabilistic it means it might make a mistake. So that refinement process is super essential. And then again, as I mentioned, run in parallel to a human and test for fidelity. Performance scorecard. Here's just a few examples of things that you could look at to vet the AI against how you do it currently. Can you be faster? Can you reduce errors? Can you reduce costs? Can you be more productive? Can you spend less money on other software? And so this is where sort of the opportunity for everybody on this call starts to come in. Brainstorm these opportunities of how you could use this around the business. Recently I sat down with a company and there were, 6 or 7 heads of different departments, and we just spent 2 hours talking about what are basic, redundant, boring tasks that entry level employees can do, and what would it look like for us to be able to automate some of that work so that entry level employees and mid level employees can be 3 to 5 times more productive because AI agents are handling some of the more basic low level work for them. If you are intrigued by any of this and you want to move forward on your own, pick 1 or 2 workflows where you could use this technology, kind of write the agent job card, kind of the overview on that last slide of what you think it could do or what you want it to do in terms of reducing costs, increasing your output, things like that. And then build it and then run a pilot where humans are reviewing it. And again, measure, share, and scale. So that's it. We only went a bit over, but
You
bringing
covered
the
a
plane in
lot.
for a landing now.
A
So,
lot in a short period of time. And I can tell everyone is thinking about those workflows and what they can automate, what they can train an entry level person to do, and therefore where they should start. And I think the important thing is we all have to start somewhere, right? Like we just have to choose one activity and dig in and then continue to learn and grow. Because, like you said, if we don't start now, we're just going to end up a year behind everybody else or more. What other questions can we answer? Does anyone have like a real life scenario that, you want to pepper Rob with some questions about?
Hey, hey, Griffin and Rob, thanks for doing this. One quick question I think comes up quite a bit is just general security, data security, strategy
Yeah.
security, et cetera. And I know there's been a lot of discussion around OpenAI and whatnot being literally open. What are your thoughts on that in terms of proceeding outside,
It's a
with
huge issue.
data?
Yeah.
Yep.
When I was working at Valiant, we were trying to get a deal done with Chick-fil-A, and that was a huge blocker for them for understandable reasons, where they didn't want their data being siphoned and fed back into the system or where anybody could query it. About 4 months ago, OpenAI released several open source models that you can actually grab and stick inside of your secure environment, and you can cut them off from the outside world so that they run just inside of your system. And so I think that's an important place for people to kind of start as they look at this. And then there's some other ones that are really interesting. Google has released a nano AI that can actually be embedded into edge systems and does not require calling back up to the cloud and can just live right there on the edge. And so I think for anybody that has expansive operations, embedded systems, physical hardware, some of those edge use cases for AI, I think, are very, very interesting.
And I'll also, I guess, touch on the AI that Rob is building for Canopy because I think it gets into some of the data security issues is rather than, just having like a business license to use chat and utilizing that at a high level, what Rob and his team have done for Canopy is basically create a separate server that all of our information lives on. It actually interfaces with chat so that I can speak to it like I would chat. It has a chat GPT style interface, but it's all branded Canopy. I can talk to it like I would a chat GPT system, but our data is all secure because it's built on a separate, how do you describe it, Rob?
Server.
It's a separate
So,
server.
yeah.
So that's a great thing about working with Rob as well, is that he, over the course of, his many years in this space, has built relationships with very trustworthy people in New Zealand and India that do the back end development. And so Rob partners with a man named Wamsi, who we're using to build out our AI. Wamsi's been to Denver. Rob actually, as part of Valiant, bought Wamsi's company. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then Wamsi came to Denver. They've had a long relationship for many years. Wamsi now lives with his family in New Zealand, but has a team in India that does the back end development as well. So I think the sum of what prevents companies from moving forward with building their own custom AI are these questions of who do we trust, right? Not everyone can go to a Deloitte and spend seven figures to build something like this out. But when you've got someone like Rob in your network and his team behind you, you're working with trusted professionals that have worked together for almost over a decade. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. That Rob can one help you brainstorm how you can utilize AI in your company. And then he can also project manage the build out of it with Wamsi and his team. And that's how we're utilizing Rob. And it's been quick. I've been very impressed with how soon our AI was up and we were testing. And I think to Rob's point, it certainly it takes a bit to train it so that we can utilize it in the most efficient way. But I'm super thrilled with how quickly we're up and running and working on refinement. It's been super fun process. So thanks, Andy. It looks like you've thrown in a free course in the chat that CU you offered through CU. So thanks for sharing that. Um, Anybody else have questions for Rob while we've got him here? I've got a use case scenario. What about a retail company, clothing brand that is a startup, been in business a couple years, a company like that that sells primarily online, direct to consumer. What are some of the automated tasks that come to mind for you in that kind of environment?
Just anybody that's reaching out to the company, right? So it could be sales on the front side, trying to understand more about the products, wanting to buy things, having payment integration into the AI so it can help sell things to customers, communicating with customers, answering questions. You know, my experience across small businesses, normally inbound questions are 70 to 90% the same. So having AI systems that can carry on fluid, you know, conversational discussions with people around answering those questions, I think can be really helpful. You can have AI systems that go and crawl the web and look for people that are talking about your product, asking about products in the domain that you're in, and then having it potentially either post on your behalf or flag for you to post with a recommendation on what to post. If you're doing social media posting, AI can generate all the content, AI can post the content for you. If you want to understand how another part of the business works or operates, like, you know, I'm not super deep despite all my experience in internet marketing, but working alongside GPT, it can walk me through step by step building any sort of marketing campaign I need, and then giving me feedback and guidance and advice and helping me review and refine that over time. And then just generally, I like Google Labs for image creation, and it's
Mhm.
photorealistic. I think it's now getting to the tipping point where it's hard to tell that the images are AI. Certainly, there's still some bad ones out there, but the Google Labs is really good. And then Google's Nano Banana product is fantastic, both for creating images and in a retail environment. Let's say you have a picture of a dress, Nana Banana can go and place that dress on a, you know, AI human that it creates, showing off modeling screenshots of what it would look like having somebody wearing that dress, either in a showroom type setting or out in the real world, like walking on the street. The Nano Banana one in particular is pretty fun. I have a client that's a hardware company, and we use the Nano Banana product to take their current hardware and then generate imagery of what it would look like in one or two generations. And so you get to show kind of the progression of the technology. And as a business person, I think it allows you to communicate more effectively with engineering, customers, investors, partners, and show more like realistic views of what the products will look like as they evolve over time.
Cool.
Andy, thanks for putting
Banana.
the Nano Banana in there for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask just a general AI question?
Of course.
So, I love ChatGPT. My very favorite coworker, me and Florence, we're making it happen every day. Um, and then I ask, a stupid, help me respond to an email question, and I get hit with this guilt because I've also talked to some Debbie Downers that help me hear or I hear about the environmental impact of AI.
Hmm.
And I'm confused by that. And I hear about these data centers you just shared. Can you help me just at high level understand that part of this?
Yeah. And as a quick note, a lot of what I'm going to share with you guys is what I've learned on that Moonshots podcast. So definitely check that out if you're interested in some of these kind of bigger level societal questions and where things are going. I think we are in a bit of a point where we're a little squeezed right now, where these data centers are growing so fast. It's pretty quick to throw up a building and some servers, but it takes a long time to bring meaningful amounts of energy onto the grid. And so I think that the next probably 3 years are going to be a little awkward as society and these AI companies kind of wrestle with each other over the energy. Starting in 2030 forward, there's a lot of really monumental things that are going to come to the market. Now, we're seeing the government approve the first nuclear reactors for the first time in 30 years. Google is financing a nuclear reactor next to one of their next to one of their data centers. And again, that's like the scale that we're talking about of what's coming with these types of buildings, where, you know, it looks cool to show a graphic of a building the size of Manhattan, but then you need nuclear reactors right next to it to then run that building. So I think there will be some elements of that big picture, like nuclear, that are going to come online. We're getting to a point where I think fusion is real. They are building fusion reactors right now. It's been a technology we've been pushing for 50 years. We should see those starting to output energy by 2030 to 2031. So that's a clean burning fuel. You don't have meltdowns, things like that. So that's going to be a really big one that's coming online. Obviously, we're doing a lot around oil and gas. Trump recently also just signed a deal with Saudi to start buying oil and gas from them as well to offset the rising demand of what we need. An area where I think China has done significantly better than us is deploying solar. What I heard on the Moonshots podcast, so I'll say I don't have firsthand account to verify this, is that just in the last 12 months, China has brought on 175 gigawatts of solar power. Mind you, a full-scale nuclear reactor is like 1 to 2 gigawatts. So energy demand is going to be massive. On the sort of slightly more futuristic front, say 2035, Amazon, Nvidia, and SpaceX are all getting really serious about starting to build data centers in space. You use solar energy to power them, and then you have the frigid temperatures of space to cool the servers to keep them from melting down. So there's some of those things that are going on in terms of the direction of energy. And then just in the last 12 months, we've seen the energy costs for computation come down by an order of 10. So it's a significantly more efficient system than even what we had 12 months ago. To some degree, that doesn't matter when, we're growing probably by 100x in terms of demand for this type of technology. But we are seeing energy come online. A lot of it is clean energy. And then we're also seeing the models themselves getting significantly more efficient in how they run. So on a per use of GPT, you're using 10% of what you were using even a year ago. And we expect to see those numbers continue to fall at that type of a rate.
Thank you.
Did that
That
answer
was
your question?
fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Anybody else?
Other
I think we're
questions?
probably pushing time here.
Well, please connect with me if you'd like Rob to chat with your teams. If you have contacts that would like to tap into Rob's expertise in this area, he is a wealth of knowledge. I can personally attest he is incredible to work with. We would love to help support your AI initiatives. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we will follow up with a recording of the webinar and also a list of some of these resources that Rob has recommended. Have a great day. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.